This is insane. If you thought the Michael biopic was gonna slow down after its opening weekend, you are absolutely insane, okay? Because listen to these numbers after its second weekend.
The Michael Jackson biopic just exploded onto the scene with a massive $218 million opening weekend. That makes it the biggest debut ever for a music biopic in film history, and it was not even a close race. The moment those numbers were released, critics and commentators rushed in with complaints. But despite all the noise, the box office numbers completely stole the spotlight. Joe Rogan predicted this reaction long before most people saw it coming. Now, the full story is becoming impossible to ignore. The film, called Michael, was made with the cooperation of the Jackson estate and follows Michael Jackson's journey from his early years through the breakthrough off-the-wall era in 1979. One of the biggest points of criticism was that the movie does not cover later allegations, and that sparked a wave of debate almost immediately.
All of the allegations towards Michael Jackson that has happened over years. The film they're saying is just actually really bad. Like, it is a bad portrayal of Michael Jackson, and it just skirts over incidents in his childhood and in his life, and it doesn't go into the nuances that a biography should.
But there is a major detail many reviews barely mentioned. The allegations were originally part of the script. In fact, they played a significant role in the early version of the story. Director Antoine Fuqua told The New Yorker that the movie originally opened with the 1993 police raid on Neverland. Those scenes were not just planned, they were actually filmed. Then came a shocking twist behind the scenes. Lawyers for the Jackson estate, who were also producers on the project, discovered a clause hidden inside the 1994 civil settlement involving the Chandler family. According to reports, that clause prevented Jordan Chandler from being depicted or mentioned in a film. The discovery triggered a huge scramble. The production had to schedule 22 emergency reshoot days, relocate work from Santa Barbara to Los Angeles, add another $10 to $15 million to a budget that had already reached $155 million, and delay the film's release by an entire year, from April 2025 to April 2026. So critics were hitting the film for leaving out material that it reportedly could not legally include. That detail changes the entire conversation. The critic score on Rotten Tomatoes landed between 27 and 39%. Meanwhile, the audience score soared to an incredible 97%. That is one of the biggest critic-to-audience divides the site has ever seen, and it immediately got people talking.
So many critics are like, this is a terrible movie, and fans are like, this is the greatest movie you've ever seen. The score on all the different fan accounts, Rotten Tomatoes and stuff, is like, it's one of the highest reviewed biopics from fans of all.
Now, let's bring Joe Rogan into the picture, because his view of Michael Jackson connects directly to everything that followed. Back in October 2025, months before the movie even reached theaters, Rogan sat down with political commentator Konstantin Kisin on The Joe Rogan Experience and shared a theory that very few major media voices were openly discussing.
Michael Jackson's doctor claims that that's what his father did to him. And that completely makes sense to me, because Michael Jackson, when he was young, had insane talent, like insane. And his father was so overbearing that I could imagine a world where he would decide, like, what's the way to keep his voice the way it is? And you use puberty blockers.
Make him a castrato, basically.
Rogan argued that Michael Jackson's romantic music came more from imagination than from personal experience. Not from living through ordinary relationships, but from envisioning a life he never truly had. According to Rogan, Michael spent so much of his life separated from normal experiences that his music became a reflection of the world he wished he could be part of.
Tony Hinchcliffe had this bit they used to do about Michael Jackson. And he goes, Michael Jackson was so good. When Beat It came on, you didn't give a fuck about those kids. And it's true.
It is, yeah.
There hasn't been a single artist in all of history that was accused by multiple people.
Yeah.
We all knew he had kids spend the night over his house. It was all sick and weird.
Yeah, really fucked
He
up.
literally turned his fucking house into a honeypot for kids.
That the Cat Williams
Neverland
bit is so good.
Oh yeah.
Where he's like, he was like, He's like, I have shit in my house that just like. He was like, I don't like silk pillowcases, but bitches do. And then he's like, now what does Michael's house have? And it's just like a Ferris wheel.
Fans connected with that feeling right away because it came across as genuine and deeply personal. That, Rogan suggested, is what made Michael's music stand out from everyone else. It felt less like a performance and more like a powerful expression of longing. And this was not a new opinion for Rogan. Years earlier, during a conversation with Wiz Khalifa in 2019, he described Michael as completely impossible to replicate. He said Michael reached a level of cultural impact so massive that even a rock radio station broke its usual format just to play one of his songs. Then February 2026 arrived, and the momentum around Michael went into overdrive. The official trailer dropped and pulled in 30 million views within its first 6 hours. It eventually reached 116 million views worldwide. That made it the most watched trailer ever released for a music biopic. The numbers were already turning heads long before the movie reached theaters. When opening weekend finally arrived on April 24, the results were huge. The film earned $97.2 million domestically and another $121.6 million internationally. That pushed the global opening to an eye-catching $218.8 million. Industry watchers were stunned by how quickly the movie raced past expectations. The performance shattered the previous biopic opening record. Oppenheimer had opened with $80 million, and Michael surged far beyond that mark. Lionsgate had reportedly hoped for around $70 million domestically. The movie cleared that target almost immediately and had already beaten it by Friday night. For many observers, it looked like another example of audiences making up their own minds, regardless of what critics were saying. A major criticism centered on the film being too sanitized. Some reviewers argued that it left out major controversies from Michael Jackson's life. However, as reports later explained, the filmmakers had already removed certain material after legal complications forced major changes to the project. Those revisions reportedly came after costly reshoots and extensive production adjustments. A well-known Michael Jackson biographer told The Hollywood Reporter that parts of the critical response seemed unfair because critics were faulting the movie for circumstances that were outside the filmmaker's control. One critic at Vulture took things even further and dismissed the backlash from fans. The critic said, "Most of the people upset about the score aren't even engaging with criticism." The argument was later summarized as, "This isn't art for them, it's sports." That comment only added more heat to the debate, especially among moviegoers who had bought tickets, watched the film, and helped drive its audience score to 97%. Fans responded fast, and the reaction was intense. Debates exploded across X and Reddit as people argued over the movie's reviews and audience reception. Many viewers accused critics of allowing their opinions about Michael Jackson as a public figure to influence how they judged the film itself. The disagreement quickly turned into a much larger culture clash. Joe Rogan has often spoken about situations like this. He has argued that when large groups within the same industry or community share very similar viewpoints, it can create an environment where different perspectives struggle to get a fair hearing.
Like, whenever you got a place where everybody has the same politics, that's not a good sign. Like, that something's gone wrong. And everybody has these progressive left-wing politics, regardless of whether or not any of their positions make sense. They all just sort of spit it out.
Supporters of the film pointed to the large gap between critic scores and audience scores as evidence that something unusual was happening. With critics scoring the movie between 27 and 39%, while audiences gave it a 97% rating, the divide became one of the biggest talking points surrounding the release. For many fans, that gap seemed to reinforce concerns about groupthink and disconnects between professional reviewers and everyday moviegoers. Another detail added fuel to the debate. In December 2025, Rogan's podcast, one of the most popular podcasts in the world, was not included in the Golden Globe's Best Podcast category. Some commentators later connected that decision to broader conversations about media influence, cultural gatekeepers, and who gets to shape public opinion.
What's fascinating to me is how much the mainstream media is in line with the very specific talking points, and how little you'll have Fox News. You essentially have Fox News on television. It's
Right.
like the only one that is pointing out the ridiculous fraud and waste.
Then, attention shifted to some of the public criticism directed at the film before its release. One of the most talked about comments came from Paris Jackson. Before audiences had even seen the movie, she publicly described the biopic as a fantasy that panders to a very specific section of my dad's fandom. The statement immediately generated headlines and sparked strong reactions online.
Don't be telling people I was helpful on the set of a movie I had 0% involvement in. LOL, that is so weird. I read one of the first drafts of the script and gave my notes about what was dishonest / didn't sit right with me. And when they didn't address it, I moved on with my life. Not my monkeys, not my circus. God bless.
What made the situation more complicated was the broader family context. According to reports cited by Radar Online, some members of Michael Jackson's extended family could potentially benefit if the film performed financially well. Because of that, Paris Jackson's comments were viewed by some observers as carrying implications beyond a simple personal opinion, adding another layer of controversy to an already heated discussion. Some commentators argued that Paris Jackson's criticism could have broader implications because of reports that certain members of Michael Jackson's extended family might benefit from the film's success. Others saw her comments simply as an honest expression of her views. Either way, the discussion quickly became a major part of the conversation surrounding the movie before its release. Then, things became even more complicated. Actor Coleman Domingo, who portrays Joe Jackson in the film, told reporters that both Prince Jackson and Paris Jackson had been involved with the project in some capacity. Paris publicly pushed back on that claim and denied being involved. The disagreement immediately attracted attention online. Coleman stood by his remarks. Paris continued to disagree. The conflicting accounts were never publicly clarified, leaving fans and media outlets debating what had actually happened. The issue remained unresolved as the film headed toward its theatrical debut. Another point of discussion involved Janet Jackson. According to comments confirmed by LaToya Jackson in an interview with Variety, Janet was invited to be portrayed in the film, but chose not to participate. LaToya explained it simply by saying she was asked and she kindly declined, so you have to respect her wishes. That decision sparked plenty of speculation from fans and commentators. Some wondered why Janet chose not to be included, while others argued that the choice was entirely personal and should not be overanalyzed. Whatever the reason, her absence created a noticeable gap in the film's portrayal of Michael Jackson's life and career. As the movie went on to generate massive box office numbers, conversations about who participated, who declined, and who publicly criticized the project only grew louder. That brings us to another major flashpoint in the debate surrounding the film, the role of professional critics. And that is where the discussion starts to connect back to comments Joe Rogan has made about competition, success, and reactions within influential industries. Rogan has expressed similar views before when discussing competition and success. In one conversation, he said, "They think when you're doing something well, that somehow might take something away from them. A lot of them are narcissists." That perspective became part of the broader debate surrounding the film and its reception. Supporters of Michael argued that some of the criticism had less to do with the quality of the movie and more with disagreements over its success and cultural impact. They pointed to the strong audience response, including the film's 97% audience score, as evidence that many moviegoers saw the project very differently from a number of professional reviewers. Whether that interpretation is fair remains a matter of opinion, but it became a major talking point throughout the film's run. The discussion became even more interesting when looking at the movie's competing Michael at the box office. Many industry observers expected several major releases to challenge its momentum. The Devil Wears Prada 2 arrived on May 1st, 2026, with enormous anticipation and a built-in fan base. Some analysts believed it could shift attention away from Michael. Instead, Michael reportedly returned to the #1 position during its 4th weekend with $26.3 million, outperforming the sequel in a closely watched matchup that surprised many box office watchers. Then there was Project Hail Mary, Ryan Gosling's science fiction film based on Andy Weir's best-selling novel. It had already established itself as one of the biggest releases of early 2026 and generated more than $650 million worldwide. Even with that success, Michael continued drawing significant audience attention and remained one of the most talked about films in theaters. Disney and Pixar's Hoppers also enjoyed an impressive run, spending 8 consecutive weeks in the top 10. Yet, once Michael arrived, much of the conversation shifted in its direction. For several weeks, the film seemed to dominate headlines, social media discussions, and box office coverage in a way that was difficult for competitors to match. Rogan has talked about this kind of situation for years when discussing competition, influence, and success. In one conversation, he said, "They think when you're doing something well, that somehow might take something away from them. A lot of them are narcissists." Whether people agree with that view or not, many supporters of Michael felt it perfectly described the reaction that followed the film's release. Fans argued that a big part of the criticism was not really about the movie itself. Instead, they believed it was about the film becoming a massive success without getting full support from critics and industry insiders. They pointed to the audience response as proof. While critics were divided, regular moviegoers showed up in huge numbers and helped push the audience score to an incredible 97%. That gap became one of the biggest stories surrounding the movie and kept the debate alive for weeks. The box office battle only made the story even more dramatic. Several major releases were expected to slow Michael's momentum. Instead, the film kept finding ways to stay on top. When The Devil Wears Prada 2 arrived on May 1st, 2026, many expected the highly anticipated sequel to take over the spotlight. It had a loyal fan base, huge name recognition, and plenty of hype behind it. But Michael fought back and reportedly reclaimed the #1 spot during its 4th weekend with $26.3 million. That result shocked many box office analysts and showed just how strong the film's staying power really was. In the end, regardless of where people stood on the film, one thing became impossible to ignore. Michael turned into a cultural event that sparked debate, shattered expectations, and drew enormous audiences around the world. The numbers spoke loudly, and the conversation around the movie only made it bigger. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with others. Drop a comment below and let us know what you think about Michael, the critic reaction, and the box office results. We want to hear your take. Thanks for watching.